afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show, like we do it every single day, we like to recap whatever happened during the day, talk about maybe things that might happen tomorrow, guess about some things, who knows, whatever you want to say, but we like to have a good time here at the Big Show, talking about all things Pittsburgh sports. And of course, when it comes to all things Pittsburgh sports, we usually lead with the Steelers. But there is some actual Penguin news today. For those of you who don't follow or may follow or whatever, the Penguin news is, of course, they hired a coach. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We will talk a little bit about who they hired, why they hired, and how he fits into what the Penguins might do. And also, I think it probably tells us a little bit about what the Penguins are thinking in terms of their plans. So with all of that being said, I got a lot of heat, I guess is what I would say. I also got a lot of different reactions. I don't know how you would say it. Some people very happy, some people very angry, some people in a place where they are just sort of not sure about anything. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where I look at it and say, we have a good time sometimes, and we write columns sometimes. And I think the biggest thing is I wrote a column today about the whole thing with respect to Rocky Bleier and Mason Rudolph and Miles Killebrew appearing at some event the other day about U.S. Steel. And I think that it was one of those things where I really believe that it's important that the context of why I wrote the column that I wrote. I think one of the things that people forget, okay, is that not everybody is all in on one side or the other and all the other stuff that goes on. Not everybody's all in. I do think that. And I think that really when you think about it, most people probably don't reside when it comes to being all in on one side or the other. Most people just want to sort of live their lives, pay their bills, feed their families and all that other stuff. But there's this lunatic fringe that we continue to appease. And that brought me to my column. My column was basically about this whole thing with respect to the fact that you have a couple of your players or whatever on their own attended some sort of it was a rally for the U.S. Steel merger. It wasn't even a rally. It wasn't even a political rally. It was an announcement of a merger. That's what it was. That Nippon Steel was going to buy into U.S. Steel or invest in U.S. Steel and all that other stuff. It was sort of just an economic merger. And a couple of Steelers decided they wanted to do it. Okay, fine. Mason Rudolph, Miles Killebrew. Of course, there was the backlash of people shrieking and losing their minds about it. And of course, the Steelers decided in this case they needed to react. That's what my column was about. They didn't react when Mike Tomlin, held fundraisers for Hillary Clinton. They didn't react when Jerome Bettis appeared on stage or whatever with, Kamala and Tim Walz. They didn't react when their owner, by the way, campaigned for Obama and, by the way, took a job with the Obama administration. They didn't react, which they shouldn't react to any of this stuff. And I think my biggest objection to all of this is very, very simple. It's just really ridiculous that teams, leagues, ownership groups, whatever, continue to try and make or use their players as pawns for this kind of stuff. And then if one of their players happens to go and support something that is on the other side of the equation, they want to distance themselves for it, apologize for it, and everything else. It's ridiculous. My point is, just let your players be players. When they're off your dime, when they're not playing for you, when they're not in your jurisdiction, if they happen to want to endorse somebody that you don't like, who cares? Who cares? I'm far more concerned that teams still continue to go to all of these lengths they go to use their players as pawns. And then when one of their players says, I don't know that I want to do that, then it becomes a problem. We've had countless examples. Some players that didn't feel like that they needed to be a part of the national anthem ceremonies. We've had players who have decided, well, we don't want to necessarily be a part of the pride stuff. We've had players who have basically said, I just don't feel comfortable doing this, or I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a part of this. We've had some players who were angry about Faith Night or whatever. The reality is players should not be asked to endorse or not endorse anything. And when they're on the clock, they should be on the clock, basically playing the sport, doing what they do best, representing the team and all that other stuff. But when they're on their own time, whatever they want to do on their own time is basically a team just needs to remain neutral. Now, obviously, there's extremes, but we're not talking about extremes. We're talking about appearing on stage with the President of the United States. So give me a break with all this nonsense. Whether you like them or not, I don't care, really. I don't understand this thing that people do. It's like, listen, if you don't like them, guess what? For 3 years, root against them. And then 3 years from now, vote for someone else. That's what we do here. I'm 54 years old, 55 actually, 54 or 55. I can't even remember how old I am. But if you do the math, I've probably lived through 15 maybe different administrations, something like that. And if I don't like one, I wait till the next one comes in. But I don't understand this thing where we have to lose our minds and create a big thing and shriek about this and, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, yada, yada. Why? If you don't like it, don't endorse it. My problem isn't with that. My problem is with the Steelers deciding, selectively what they're going to distance themselves from and what they're going to claim that their players are allowed to do or not allowed to do. That's all I'm going to tell you. It's just that. Whether you like it or not, it's just that. And I thought Miles Killebrew said it best. Hey, I have a chance to hang out. I have a chance to, come and participate in something with the President of the United States. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with everything he does or whatever, endorse him. It's the President of the United States. And I could tell my kids someday, hey, I hung out with the President of the United States. I don't see what the problem is, man. I just don't. I don't. And if you don't like the fact that these guys went there because you don't like, the president, okay, you're entitled to your opinion. But this idea that somehow you're going to, we've got to force the Steelers into action or something or whatever, it's silly. It's really silly. I mean, I just think that, we've lost our minds in this country when it comes to politics and political stuff. It's like a zero-sum game now. You either are all in or all out, no matter what, and there's nothing in between. And the bottom line is, whether you like the president or hate the president, I don't know. Sounds to me like that was a really good announcement for this region economically. So, it's like the people that no matter what somebody from the other side does, they find a way to act like it's the worst thing that's ever happened. And I got news for you, okay? Got news for you. And I really mean this. Every president of my lifetime, I could probably come up with 5 really good things they did and 5 really bad things they did. And if you can't, I got to question whether or not you really legitimately understand or know what's going on. And whether your party means more to you than reality. So, to me, I don't get upset about stuff like this. I don't. because I look at it like they're able to go and endorse whoever they want to endorse. And I don't even know that they endorsed anybody. I think that they were just a part of the press conference or whatever. And I enjoyed their answer when people tried to push them to the wall about, why were you there? Well, I don't know, because the president of the United States invited me. How about that? You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. I mean, I don't understand why this is just really even a story, except for there are certain people that want to push, these agendas. And I just don't get it. But I think teams have put themselves in a position, right? They've put themselves in a position where they've had to, where they've used or seemingly used their players as pawns, and then wonder why there's backlashes and things of the such. And I've got to be honest with you. I'd be willing to bet, looking at the demographics of the Steeler Nation, there's probably more people in Steelers Nation that were okay with what Mason Rudolph did than the opposite. But it's the opposite that, of course, the Steelers feel the need to placate. And I don't like that. I don't. I didn't like it when we force people to participate in the national anthem. All of these, what I call these paid military ads that we make these players do and we make these teams do with the, all of these, the pride stuff, all of this stuff. To me, that stuff should be players, coaches, general managers, whatever, should be on their own time, period. And then you would stay out of trouble. Then you wouldn't have to worry about these kinds of controversies. Because at the end of the day, you wouldn't have to respond to any of them. And if people didn't like it, and here's the funny thing about the Steelers, okay? If you're the Pirates, maybe even the Penguins to a lesser extent, but if you're the Pirates, if you're Pitt, you got to sell tickets. You got to try and placate everybody and try and make everybody happy. If you're the Steelers, you don't have to give a damn because your tickets are all sold. So why are you doing this? There's not a single sponsor that's going to jump off board because you had a couple of players show up at a Trump thing. Not one. You're not gonna like open the season with 5,000 empty seats. You're not. Because anybody that's saying they're going to give up their season tickets probably is not. And if they do, they'll be sold by the end of the day. And the Steelers know this. That to me is what's so ridiculous about it all. The Steelers are in a position where they don't have to respond every time somebody shrieks and cries and is wondering, is whining about something. They don't have to placate what I call the professional victims in this world. And we've got a lot of them. Trust me, a lot of people that really just get off on being a victim and really just get off on, crying the blues about stuff that has nothing to do with their life. So to me, my column was really not about Trump or not Trump or whatever. It was about the Steelers doing this thing where they're going to choose sides when they don't need to. Because in writing this, apology letter or whatever it was to their season ticket holders, they're choosing sides. And the reason that I say that is because they didn't do it, again, when their head coach was holding luncheons for Hillary Clinton. They didn't do it. They didn't do it when the owner was campaigning for Obama and then joining his administration. They didn't do it when guys like the Bus were showing up at Kamala and Tim Walz's rallies. They didn't do it. So all I'm saying to you is, if you think my column was an endorsement of Trump, you are out of your mind. And you are just completely missing the point. My column was, it's time, really, teams should stay out of these kinds of things. Stop showing your hands. Stop alienating half of your fan base because you want to, virtue signal or whatever. Stop doing that. And again, it's not just in this case. If it was up to me, there'd be no national anthem, or if there was going to be a national anthem, there would be no players on the field, no coaches, no players on the field. Play the national anthem if you want to, but nobody's on the field when it's being played. Because the bottom line is, then you can avoid the idea that, some of these people who may not want to stand there, now you don't even have to worry about that. Let them play it. And you know what? It used to be like that. It used to be like that. People say, oh, you can't do that. It used to be like that. It's still like that at a number of colleges. You know that, right? Probably didn't know that. That's the point. So to me, if you're upset about this, I don't know what to tell you. Now, it is going to be, one of those situations where no matter what I say, there are going to be people that don't want to listen and don't want to hear my point because they hate Trump so much or they love Trump so much or whatever. But those of you who are like me, not on the lunatic fringe, able to think straight, even if people have different ideas about the world and the life, you know what I'm saying. Period. You know what I'm saying. So I feel like it's going to be really, really important, all this stuff. It's going to be important to move forward. Now, one of the things that happened today, there was a false alarm that maybe, just maybe, there was going to be a quarterback that got hired, that he was going to, sign or whatever, but didn't happen. So we had to transition into some other things, but luckily, there was a hiring for the Penguins. Now, one of the things that's interesting to me is that there was, a situation where all of these guys were focused on, I'm talking about the guys that cover the Penguins for a living. We're all focused on about 4 or 5 other candidates, it seemed like. But the guy that got hired was Dan Muse. Now, what is interesting about Dan Muse, to me at least, is that people are referring to him as the dark horse solution. But I do think this. If you listen to Kyle Dubas, when he, moved on from Mike Sullivan or whatever happened, whoever moved on from who, it's one of those things, probably a lot like the Jamie Dixon situation at Pitt, where you kind of knew both sides were ready to move on. And even though, it became, that Scott Barnes fired Jamie Dixon or whatever, or Jamie Dixon left on his own, it was more of a mutual thing where, Jamie Dixon kind of knew, didn't really want to work at Pitt anymore under Scott Barnes. He had a good situation with previous ADs. He decided, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. Scott Barnes decided, he's a successful coach, but probably has run his course. Let's move on. Similar to what happened with Mike Sullivan today. And I think that when it is going to be all said and done, this is what you should probably look at when it comes to, this hire. Dan Muse, to me, is exactly the kind of coach and the kind of coach that Kyle Dubas set out to find. Why? Because, and here's the statement that says it all. Dan Muse stood out, and this is from Dubas. Dan Muse stood out as the best choice. What separated Dan was, are you ready? His ability to develop players. That's the biggest thing to me. His ability to develop players. And if you look at it, our Matt Vensel from the Post-Gazette writes, he possesses a robust background in player development, which was a must for the Penguins as they continue their transition to the future. He's the head coach of the U.S. national team development program, right? Bench for championship runs in the NCAA and United States Hockey League. Assistant in Nashville, right? He's a guy who basically is somebody who has just really been good at developing players. This is what Dubas says, from his success in developing college and junior players to his impactful work with veteran players during the time in the NHL, Dan has shown a proven ability to connect with players at all stages of their career, his overall body of work, attention to detail, yada, yada, yada. Look, it's very clear to me in making this hire that it's going to work as long as the Penguins are now legitimately committed to rebuilding. And they should be. They just went out and hired a developmental coach. I mean, honestly, Cal Dubas now, his next item of business should be finding a way to move on from some of those guys, the old guys. Sitting down, saying to Letang, saying to Malkin, saying to Carlson, right? I could go back and forth with Rust, whatever. I'd even say Tristan Jarry, to be honest. Listen, I know we all have no trade clauses. Pick a few places that I can trade you to, because we are going to try and make some trades. We're going to try and figure out what we can get for you, period. And whatever we can get for you, guess what? It's going to go towards this rebuild that we are now 100% committed to. And that's where you even have to go to Crosby and say, listen, for the next 2 years, we're going to be bad. We would love to have you as a centerpiece so that when we rise again, that we have a star in place, even though you'll be older. But the reality is we're not going to hold you hostage because this is a rebuild now. We are not going to try and do anything other than reload, rebuild, and we've got a coach in place now who's good at really good at developing young players. So we're going to give them a lot of young players to develop. I mean, ultimately, if they were still playing the song and dance that they have played forever, which has been, 3 or 4 years where they're basically saying, well, you know what? We think we can compete because we've still got the big three. So we're going to piece together these lineups that, and try and get a veteran here and grab a Carlson and do this. And we'll try and just throw it all together, slop it together, hope that it's enough to make the playoffs, and then hope that somehow, Crosby and Malkin and Letang find the fountain of youth and make a run. They've done that for 3 years. And it's 4 years probably. And now it's just time to give up the ghost. They did win 2 cups, and so, it was important to give them as much time as possible, but give up the ghost now. Now it's time for them to take a look at the fact it's over completely. There's no value in keeping Letang and Malkin here. There's none. I'm sorry. Now they're popular, no value. No value in keeping Tristan Jarry here, if you ask me. Move on. It's hard to do, but you got to do it. And to me, that is where, this hire, to me, that is like a, sounding the alarm that, hey, we are going to rebuild. And so I think that's why they hired, that's why they made the hire they did. And if you listen to it, right, when Cal Dubas moved on from Mike Sullivan, or Mike Sullivan moved on, or however you want to say it. So funny, like people get so angry about it. Like, no, he quit. He didn't do that. He did. He got fired. I don't care. It seems to me like it was a lot more of a mutual decision than anything else. But Mike Sullivan's no longer here. So whenever they moved on from each other, Cal Dubas made it very clear that this was the kind of hire he was going to make. Right? There's other guys that were out there. I mean, hell, if I'm not mistaken, Joel Quenneville was probably still on the market when Sullivan was, let go. I mean, there's a lot of guys that he could have went to and said, hey, this guy, or that guy has lots of experience. This guy's won. This guy's done this. But he made it very clear. No. No. He made it very clear we're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is figure out a way, to get a younger coach in here a guy who probably is somebody who, is going to be good at developing players and move on from there. Because if we do that, I think the bottom line is we'll be able to really start moving forward again. And that's what I think they're going to do. It's going to be very interesting now, though, whether or not they follow up on that and continue to really move forward with this, what I would call, plan to rebuild. I think that's the biggest thing, period. They're going to rebuild. Now they've got a coach. They've made it very clear. This is what our, next step is to try and rebuild. Well, to me, then rebuild. Stop with this thing you do where you're almost pregnant. By the way, the game is always on at Archies. Get down to Archies. Archies on Carson. Home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. Home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archies and enjoy a really good meal, really good time. And tell Archie you said hello when I said hello when you get there. Okay, I think that one other story that I want to get to today is this whole thing with Beanie Bishop. Beanie Bishop apparently has triggered some people because he said some crazy things about Pitt. He's a West Virginia guy, said some crazy things about Pitt, and then, of course, sent a video out, I don't know, it was on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it was, where he was stomping on the Pitt logo over in the Southside facility. First of all, here's my first thought. A, it's kind of why we love rivalries, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of like one of those things is we love rivalries because of stuff like this. So I don't really have do I think it's classy? No, but rivalries are probably not going to be classy all the time. Is Beanie Bishop relevant enough to do this kind of thing? Probably not, but he plays for the Steelers. He said some crazy things about how he doesn't even like seeing Pitt's coaches over there and, all that other stuff. It's part of the fun of rivalries. And apparently some of the Pitt players or something were waiting for him today when he walked out on the practice field. And he said, oh, yeah, it looks like the Beanie Bishop fan club. Well, the good news is that those guys exist because I don't know if anybody else would actually be in the Beanie Bishop fan club. Because Beanie Bishop, to me, is not relevant enough for this much, noise. In many ways, this is him basically getting attention. And he got it. He got the attention he wants. But if you're a Pitt fan and you're upset by this, I don't understand why you'd be upset by it. I mean, it's part of the rivalry. You guys always complain about, well, we need, Penn State, we need a rival and rivalries and this. Okay, you got a rival. And this is a part of the rivalry. I'm just gonna say, Beanie Bishop is what he is. He's a guy who's fighting to keep his job with the Steelers. He's a guy that probably is not going to be a starter this year. I mean, he's a guy that, probably next year, after next year, will be somewhere else. But he's made a nice career for himself, and that's great. And if you're angry about it, I always say this, but you got to really sort of reevaluate your life because we like rivalries. We like the fun that they produce. Now, the comical things, it's one of those things where, see, Straight Out of Pittsburgh asks, you mean like when some fans reacted angrily to Black Lives Matter or even Pride Month? No, you're missing the point, Straight Out of Pittsburgh. It's not about the fans, the lunatic fringe. It's about the fact that the team felt the need to respond. Okay, so get it right. Anyway, the funny thing about Beanie Bishop to me is he's acting like he's like this lifelong mountaineer. He wasn't born and raised in West Virginia. He didn't grow up a Mountaineer fan. His first school was Western Kentucky. His second school was Minnesota. He played 1 year at West Virginia, and he's acting like he's like deeply rooted in the Pitt, West Virginia rivalry. That's what's so dumb about it all, if you ask me. That's my opinion. I mean, nowadays, all these guys play 3 schools in 4 years or 4 schools in 5 years. We got guys that have played at 5 schools in 6 years, right? I mean, you're not really, you're just basically making a lot of noise. Because prior to that, your rival was, let me see, checks notes, Wisconsin. And prior to that, your rival was, what was it? He was at Western Michigan or Western Kentucky. I forget where the hell he was at. The reality is, Central Michigan or Central Kentucky or whatever, Eastern Kentucky, whoever the hell his other rival was. That's what I would tell you is silly. That's why it's silly. But at the end of the day, it's fun. And if you don't like it, what are you so jammed up about? It's a rivalry thing. I find it, again, amusing that a guy that was there 1 year, that played at 2 other schools, who, didn't grow up a lifelong, West Virginia guy or whatever. I grew up in this rivalry. I grew up learning how to hate Pitt, or whatever. And there's people that grew up, say, in Waynesburg or, Washington County, that's sort of halfway in between. And you got families that, my side of the family hates West Virginia. This side of the family hates Pitt. They grew up in it and all that stuff. I mean, that's not the case here. This is just a guy making a lot of noise. And it worked for a, boring off day in the middle of, OTAs or whatever we call them. He got some noise. Anyway, that's exactly right. Carol just pointed it out. If anybody should be doing this, it should be Zack Fraser. That's the guy that should be doing it because he's an actual mountaineer, not a rentineer. Like Beanie Bishop, I mean, give me a break, will you please? I just have to laugh. But Zack Fraser's the guy that should be doing it. But either way, it's a rivalry. It's fun. And I just feel like when I see these things and see how outraged people get about stuff, well, again, you know what? Probably need to reevaluate the things that make you angry and make you upset. At any rate, I would hope tomorrow we might be able to have some real discussions about the quarterback, but then again, we've been saying that for 2 months, so who knows? See you then.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.